Yesterday, we saw a terrible moment for the state's case in the Kyle Rittenhouse case when their key witness testified he was only fired upon when he pointed his gun at Kyle Rittenhouse. There's a funny thing. If you Google search it, if you turn on the likes of, MSNBC, you get a completely false reality. It's crazy. I mean, it's obvious to all of us. It's obvious to you who are watching because you probably watch my channel because we break through the BS of the establishment narrative. But it is truly, truly profound to see it so palpable, the lies and manipulation. Take a look at this story. Kyle Rittenhouse shooting survivor delivers tearful testimony in teen's murder trial. Framing is everything. And so when I talk about how the media lies, a lot of people are like, there was one post by the Daily Beast, and they were just like, this guy testified X, Y, and Z, and I said the media just lies. And a bunch of people, these leftists respond with, they're just reporting what he said. Okay. If there's a criminal trial and one of the attackers, the perpetrators, Gage Grosskreutz is a perpetrator, not a victim. If one of the perpetrators testifies he had no reasonable knowledge, no knowledge whatsoever to believe that Kyle Rittenhouse was a threat to anyone or that he had done anything wrong. This is very, 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 very important part. I want to show you this update here. He testified that he had seen nothing to determine that Rittenhouse had done anything warranting having a gun pointed at him. What you need to understand is that a lot of people are viewing the Rittenhouse case with the benefit of hindsight. We've seen footage of this. We're hearing testimony. And now people are like, oh, I understand why Gage Grosskreutz would attack Kyle Rittenhouse. But now you need to understand it from the perspective of that night, which is what the defense is doing a good job of. And they asked Gage Grosskreutz, one of the perpetrators, one of the criminals who should be charged, they asked him what knowledge did he have on that night as he drew an illegal gun, an illegal firearm. I should say not an illegal firearm, but a gun he was possessing illegally. Again, not a fan of the statutory laws on gun stuff, but for the sake of this criminal trial, the defense said, what knowledge did you have that Kyle Rittenhouse had done anything? Did you see Kyle Rittenhouse do anything? He says, no. Did you see him draw the weapon and point it at people and fire? No, nothing. You had no information. So here's what happens. On that night, Gage Grosskreutz is charging after Kyle Rittenhouse. He has no idea why. He has no idea what's going on. He asked Rittenhouse what happened, and Rittenhouse says, I didn't do anything. That's his own testimony, which is to reason. His information is purely speculative. He has no idea what's happening. He pulls out a gun, which he's in possession of illegally in Wisconsin, points it at Kyle Rittenhouse. Then Kyle Rittenhouse fires. Now, what do we get? All of the media saying victim, 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 survivor, I thought I was going to die, paramedic. It's all sympathetic, and it's ignoring reality. So I pull up YouTube. So I do research here in the mornings right before I pull up these stories, and I go on YouTube. It's something truly amazing. So this story I have pulled up for Yahoo News. I'm showing you, just off from the start, the bias, right? But take a look at this. This is from MSNBC. 34,000 views. Legal expert. Kyle Rittenhouse trial judge statements call into question possible bias. The judge snapped at CNN because he's like, I'm doing everything by the book. Why are you yelling at me? And this is what they do. This segment from MSNBC is truly crazy. Let me play a little bit real quick.
Today is day 6 in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, the Illinois teen who killed 2 people and wounded a third during protests after the death of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. Jurors heard from the lone survivor, Gage Grosskreutz, who was training to become an EMT and was providing care to anyone who needed it.
I'm gonna pause right there and say, according to the actual trial, if you watch it, Kyle Rittenhouse was doing the exact same thing, and several witnesses have testified that Kyle Rittenhouse was there with a medical kit, saying he was an EMT, whether he was or wasn't. I know he was a lifeguard, and offering medical care to everyone, including the rioters. You see how they don't include that?
That deadly night in Kenosha, Grosskreutz came across Rittenhouse after he had shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum and was about to kill Anthony Huber. Grosskreutz acknowledged that he was armed with a pistol, but says his hands were raised when he was shot by Rittenhouse.
Lie. That's crazy, isn't it? That MSNBC put out that statement. This guy just lied. Grosskreutz did not testify that he had his hands raised and then was shot. Isn't this insane? Here's a ABC News. Come on, let me give you some mainstream media sources. Shooting victim says he was pointing his gun at Rittenhouse. This is insane. Well, at the very least, I can show you how MSNBC just lied. Because ABC News says right here, shooting victim. You see how they frame this? All right. This is, you know what I try to do with these videos? Reality. Unfortunately, these people who watch MSNBC are in a cult. Oh, I know. I can hear them all saying, oh, well, Trump's got a cult too. Yeah, don't care. That has nothing to do with this right now. I'm talking about an actual criminal trial. I have been watching the live streams of these trials. I've been sitting here as the prosecution spins around making huge blunders and their witnesses backfire on them. Don't get me wrong. The state's got some points. It's not a perfect, clear-cut case. And we had Kash Patel on IRL the other day. He said he used to be a trial lawyer, prosecutor as well. And he was like, you never know, man. The jury could go any way. You have no idea. He's like, cases I thought I'd win, I lost. Cases I thought I'd lose, I'd win. And he says he thinks Kyle might get a lesser charge, like manslaughter. Because if he's being charged with the top murder, then the jury can convict him of anything in between. But take a look at this. ABC News says, a protester and volunteer medic wounded on the streets of Kenosha by Kyle Rittenhouse testified Monday that he was pointing his own gun at the rifle-toting Rittenhouse. Unintentionally, he said, when the young man shot him. You see how they still try to frame this as though Rittenhouse did something wrong. It's clear cut, at least on this count. Kyle Rittenhouse had his rifle pointed at one guy who ran up and then put his hands up and backed away. Rittenhouse did not fire. Gage Grosskreutz advanced on Rittenhouse, gun in hand, and then put his hands up, gun in hand. Rittenhouse did not fire. Grosskreutz then points the weapon at Rittenhouse, who fires, hitting him in the arm. I'm sad all of it happened. We don't want any of it to happen. But look how insane the media is. I just showed you this. Look at this. Let me play it again for you.
And was about to kill Anthony Huber. Grosskreutz acknowledged that he was armed with a pistol, but says his hands were raised when he was shot by Rittenhouse.
Isn't that insane? This is what MSNBC does. Now, I'm not here to defend Fox News. I'm not here to defend CNN or any other outlet. I am showing you right here, MSNBC just lied. Look at this. You Google search it. All of the media is lying about what's going on. And they're lying by omission. And they're lying by framing. He testified he had his hand raised. That was an overt lie. MSNBC just made up fake news. You've probably seen the viral clip where the prosecutor asks the Gage Grosskreutz, he's like, so it's only after you pointed your weapon at Rittenhouse that you got shot? And he goes, that's correct. Or he says yes, or something to that effect. MSNBC lies. And here's the crazy part about it. They don't even show that testimony. Look at this.
I thought that the defendant was an active shooter.
So instead of actually showing you his testimony where he says, I had my weapon pointed at Rittenhouse, it shows him saying, I thought he was an active shooter. I thought I was going to lose my life. Let me break this down for you. First, I'll show you all the media. CNN, armed paramedic who was shot by Rittenhouse testifies he thought the teen was an active shooter. Immaterial. It's irrelevant. If you wanted to get a fair assessment of this, the headlines would not be this way. I can't say I'm surprised. Look at tearful survivor delivers tearful testimony in teen's murder trial. He was never trying to kill Kyle Rittenhouse trial. There's the MSNBC one. Let me pull up legal insurrection and show you what's really happening here. Rittenhouse trial day 5. Alleged victim Gage Grosskreutz implodes, admits he had Glock pointed at Kyle when shot, lied to police about it. It would be hard to fully express what a catastrophe this day was for prosecutor Binger. State laughably responds with suddenly discovered drone footage. Yeah, that was amazing. You heard what MSNBC said and the testimony they show. Let me break it down for you because Andrew Branca has an excellent point-by-point breakdown over at Legal Insurrection. He says, Grosskreutz only shot when his gun aimed at Rittenhouse. He says, by far the most destructive of Grosskreuz's testimony to the state narrative of guilt was when he recounted before the jury that at the moment he was shot by Kyle in the bicep, the moment that his bicep was vaporized, to use his own language, his Glock 27 40 caliber pistol with the round in the chamber was pointed directly at Kyle from a distance of perhaps 3 feet. All this while he insisted on direct examination that he would never be able to shoot another human because that's not the kind of person I am. Kyle only ever shot people who were attacking him. Gage Grosskreutz testified this as the state's star witness, that other people who approached Kyle didn't shoot. One guy kicked him. He didn't shoot him. Check this out. Grosskreutz was concerned attacks might cause Kyle serious injury. This was an amazing breakdown in the state's case because in this testimony, Grosskreutz is on record saying that he was concerned that Anthony Huber swinging the skateboard was going to hurt Rittenhouse and that you should stop. That's amazing. Look at this. He says, here's Grosskreutz testifying that he was particularly concerned that Kyle might suffer serious head trauma under the tender mercies of Anthony Huber's skateboard in the same day that ADA Binger sought to ridicule the notion that a skateboard could present a deadly force threat. The prosecutor was trying to convince the jury, skateboard's no threat. Skateboard's no threat. And then their own witness testifies, actually, yeah, I was really concerned about that. You see, Gage Grosskreutz is trying to save himself, not the prosecutor. He's not charged with the crime. Maybe he will be. I really doubt it. As for the first witness, I forget his name, something Black, who claimed he was Rittenhouse's brother, he's charged by the prosecutor, so he's desperately throwing Rittenhouse under the bus to try and save himself. This guy knows he's not being charged, knows he probably won't be charged, so he's like, screw the prosecution, I better not incriminate myself. I better make myself look as good as possible to the jury. Basically what he's doing. Grosskreutz shouted at Huber to stop striking Kyle with the skateboard. Now, this was actually a lie to the police. In his testimony, Grosskreutz said that he did not tell the police that he did not say to stop swinging the skateboard. He told cops that he told at the time Huber not to hit him with the board. He testified now in hindsight that is not correct. That didn't happen. He lied to the police. Grosskreutz concedes jump kick man kicking Kyle in the face with boots, and Rittenhouse didn't strike him because Rittenhouse didn't shoot at every single person, only those who were presenting a deadly force threat. The skateboard trying to grab his gun, not the guy who was kicking him, because maybe Kyle was like, I'm just being kicked. And he was I'm actually surprised by this. At every confrontation Grosskreutz had with Kyle, the 17-year-old was non-confrontational. Here's where it gets really important. This is the important part. So much for they were saving Kenosha from an active shooter narrative. Bronca writes, as for the notion pushed by ADA Binger that the men attacking the 17-year-old did so in the belief that he was a purported active shooter, Grosskreutz put a stake in the heart of that nonsensical narrative when he conceded that even he, the only identified of the attackers on Kyle who could have been so motivated, lacked any reasonable basis on which to come to such a conclusion. As I noted in my most recent post examining the issues of provocation in the case, an active shooter belief that Kyle was an active shooter, in the absence of evidence consistent with such a perception, can only be irrational, speculative, and imaginative belief. And an irrational, speculative, and imaginative belief of an attacker cannot in any way diminish a defender's privilege of self-defense. To allow this would be to make every claim of self-defense contingent on the irrational, speculative, and imaginative beliefs of the attacker. And that's not how self-defense law in general, nor the law in particular, works. In the context of an active shooter perception, for that perception to be reasonable and not merely speculative, at a minimum, there must be evidence of the core characteristic of an active shooter as an aggressor who has or is attempting to shoot multiple people. As Gage Grosskreutz naturally had zero evidence that Kyle had engaged in any such activity. Grosskreutz filmed himself running along, I'll be careful here, running alongside Rittenhouse saying, what happened? Did you shoot somebody or something to that effect? And Rittenhouse says, I'm getting the police. I didn't do anything or something to that effect. Which means, from Gage Groskreuz's perspective, Rittenhouse was not an active shooter. Or at least you can try and convince the jury he thought he was. But if you're going to go to a reasonable person and say, they're both running towards the police, saying he's getting the police, does that sound like an active shooter? No. May have been a shooter, not active. But then people started saying, cranium that boy, get him, get him, get him. And Grosskreutz is seen on camera away from Rittenhouse because he turns around at some point. He runs back towards Rittenhouse, and you can see him on camera drawing the Glock from his waistband in the small of his back. He was asked by the defense, you couldn't see Rittenhouse, could you? And he goes, no. So you didn't know where he was? No. And you're drawing your gun, a gun you were in illegal possession of, no less. So let me break this down for you. Grosskreutz, in the video, in his own testimony, had no evidence Rittenhouse did anything wrong. Think about what that means. I'll throw it back to when I was in Hamburg. I think I was in Hamburg, Germany, with Luke Rudkowski and a bunch of other people. Luke was it was this big protest event. It was the G20 or whatever, the G7. I can't remember which one. And Antifa was everywhere, far left extremists. Luke and another journalist are walking down the street when some random person yells, Nazi Schweinhund, Nazi pig, at him, not knowing who Luke is, having no evidence to believe it, and just screaming it. Random people jumped up from the side of the road and started punching Luke and this other journalist, Max, with no evidence, just because someone screamed it. That makes you the bad guy. Because Luke obviously is not a Nazi pig or anything like that. This guy just got the wrong person, apparently just screamed at him. Now let's take a look at what happened with Anthony Huber and Gage Grosskreutz. Now, what Rosenbaum did, there's actually a video. Apparently, they say it shows Rosenbaum wielding a chain. We believe it's Rosenbaum. There was testimony from the state's own witness that Rosenbaum said, if I get you alone tonight, I'll effing kill you. A direct threat of death on Kyle Rittenhouse. No joke. Literally, he said it to Kyle Rittenhouse. He attacks Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse only fires when someone else fires their gun behind him, a guy named Zeminski, who pulled his gun out and fired in the air, told the cops it was stolen, apparently, lied. Richie McGinnis testified that Rosenbaum lunged for the rifle. Rittenhouse defended himself in a very tragic and unfortunate situation. Richie McGinnis rendered aid to the man who was Rosenbaum, who was lying there dying. But this is a guy who had already issued a death threat to Kyle, chased after him, and tried grabbing his gun, and a gun was fired. That's self-defense. No one who attacked him afterwards knows what happened. Anthony Huber may have been motivated by good intentions, and I genuinely believe he was, and I feel bad. I really do. I'm sad. He probably thought they were like, this guy, they yelled, he shot somebody, he wanted to stop him. Here's the problem. He didn't see it. Anthony Huber had no idea what happened, and he hit Rittenhouse with a skateboard and tried taking his gun from him. If there's an old lady who's being beaten mercilessly by a mugger, and then the mugger looks at you and says, that old lady's got a gun, and then you start beating the old lady, you're not the good guy. You don't know what happened, which is actually an argument against the good guy with the gun narrative. One of the problems faced when there's an active shooter is that if somebody else has a weapon, they might draw their weapon and the cops might not realize this person is trying to stop the shooter. It's a very complicated circumstance. Gage Grosskreutz had no evidence to believe Rittenhouse was an active shooter. Rittenhouse was fleeing towards the police, saying, I'm getting the police, was not actively shooting anyone. He approached him with a gun in his hand, and Rittenhouse still did not fire on him. What does MSNBC say? He had his hands up. He had his hands up with a Glock in his hand, and then he points it, and then he gets shot. The media is lying. And the scary thing is, when it came to the Chauvin case, they were saying, a lot of us were saying that the media was prepping people for disappointment, convincing people that the trial was going really well for the prosecutors. It wasn't. The whole time, the trial was going pretty well for the defense, but it was a political trial. The jurors stated after the fact they were scared rioters would show up to their houses. One guy, it was one of the witnesses, an old house of his, had a pig's head and blood smeared all over it. They were bringing the jurors in with armed police with rifles because riots were ongoing in that city. So the defense in that case did really, really well with Chauvin, but not perfectly. The prosecution had their points. There were some really interesting points that I thought would be exculpatory. Apparently they weren't, but probably because it was political. So you take a look at what's going on now with the Rittenhouse trial. It's not that the media is prepping people for disappointment. They're prepping their expectations for criminal prosecution. That's what I think really happens. I think what the media was doing with Chauvin was that they wanted everyone to expect a conviction because there was going to be a conviction because it was a political trial. With Kyle Rittenhouse, what I fear may be about to happen is When you watch this, when you look at the legal analysis and when you actually watch and sit through this, you're just like, I can't believe the state's own witnesses keep knocking down their own case. You have that famous viral photo now that was on Reddit top all-time posts of the prosecutor face-palming. If you are getting your news directly from the source, you would know the prosecution is floundering. But if you go to the mainstream media, you would hear lies and manipulation. They're not prepping people for disappointment. They're prepping them for a conviction. They want regular people to hear in the news that Rittenhouse is a bad guy, that the prosecution proved their case, so when he's convicted, they'll say justice was served. If the media was honest and showed you what was actually being said by Gage Grosskreutz and these other witnesses, you would be shocked when Rittenhouse is actually convicted. So I think Rittenhouse will be convicted. I think he'll get a charge. I don't know for sure. I can't see the future. I don't have all the answers. I think there's good reason for the jury to acquit him outright right now. But because it's a political trial, they might just give him a manslaughter charge as a kind of, it's a compromise. Not justice. Nope. Just they want to prevent riots. The media is lying about everything. So when Kyle Rittenhouse gets convicted, they say, well, of course he got convicted. Because if the media was being honest and Kyle Rittenhouse got convicted, people would be like, this is a miscarriage of justice, and they'd be upset by it. So don't be surprised. They're playing dirty games here. Now, I think it's surprising that even ABC was forced to admit that the attacker, the criminal, violent, attempted murderer, Gage Grosskreutz, was pointing his gun at Rittenhouse. But they call him a shooting victim. Okay. We see how this game is being played. You Google search this, and it's not surprising to anybody. But this is it. The media is crooked. Absolutely crooked. I am not happy about what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm not happy about the riots. I'm not happy that anybody lost their lives. I think it was horrible. But let's not put a kid in prison because he was attacked by 3 people who had no reason to attack him. I'll leave it there. We got more trial coming up today. I'll probably have another segment depending on what happens, but stick around. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.